My name is Ben, and this is Sean, and today we will be discussing oligopolies and their effect on the market.
Yeah, see, an oligopoly is a market structure in which only a few firms hold most of the market power, and they sell a differentiated product.
Alright, so under oligopolies, the limited number of firms are interdependent, meaning the decisions they make are influenced by the decisions made by the other firms within their market.
See, interdependence can come in several different forms. They can collude as a part of a cartel, or work against each other under competition. The limited number of firms enables price-making behavior, rather than the price-taking behavior of a more competitive market structure. Okay, for a real-world example of an oligopoly, we can look at a multitude of markets.
One real-world example of an oligopoly colluding would be in the RAM markets today. So recently there was actually a lawsuit filed against Micron Technologies, Samsung, and Hynix over price fixing behaviors over the last couple years. And we will show you some graphs and evidence of that happening. Alright, so when first looking at the graph of a market under the influence of a cartel, it could be first mistaken as the graph of a monopoly, because they both have similar curves of demand and marginal revenue. Since the firms in the oligopoly are cooperating in a cartel, the firms are enjoying the profits similar to a monopoly, incentivizing them to produce a less allocatively efficient quantity to carve out more profit from consumer surplus. This is shown when the quantity at which demand meets marginal cost is restricted by the colluding firms to produce where marginal cost equals marginal revenue in order to increase their economic profit. And then in the case of the DRAM manufacturers, we can see that supply has been artificially restricted, and the result is that the prices have been vastly inflated. The small number of suppliers of DRAM allows the companies to maximize profits in this way.
Alright, and we're back. An example of oligopolies not colluding would be the fiercely competitive Indian telecom industry. In this example, the few firms supplying telecom services were diving prices so far down that Aircel, the country's 5th largest telecom company, filed for bankruptcy. And we're going to go to some graphs explaining that. When looking at this stranger kind of graph of the non-colluding competitive oligopoly, it can be seen that there's a kink in the graph at the current quantity that's being produced. This is making the assumption that if one firm raises its price, the demand is elastic because the other firms would maintain their price to get more of a profit. Inversely, the demand curve becomes inelastic after the firm lowers its price, seeing as the other firms in the market will follow suit to not lose their own market share. Okay, so when you look at the downward sloping, very inelastic demand curve for these competitive oligopolies, you can see how Aircel was just demolished by these prices.
Now, to measure the degree to which a market is an oligopoly, we can use something called the Herfindahl-Hirschman index, otherwise known as the HHI. So the HHI score for an industry is generated by taking the percentage market share of a company, squaring it, and then adding it to the number of important companies we want to be measuring the score for. So after this is performed, we can get a score anywhere from 0 to 10,000, with 0 being pretty much perfectly competitive, and then 10,000 being one company monopoly with 100% control. So for example, Ben here is going to talk about one of these calculations we performed. Yeah, see, in the gaming console industry, the top 3 firms are Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. The score for the market there is an HHI score of about 4,900. So we got this score by taking Sony, who has a market share of 32%, squaring that, adding to Microsoft's 62%, squaring that, adding that to Nintendo's 6%. And then after adding that together, we get that aforementioned 4,900.
And that's been a wrap. Thank you for listening to us talk.
Alright, so this concludes our Econ project, and our Econ year, and our lives. One example, a real-world example of an oligopoly collusion.
A Bologopolic conclusion.
Bolozopolis illusion.